Dr. Ethan Cross stared at the endless darkness of space through the window of his small research ship, Nova 7. The mission was simple: study an uncharted asteroid field and report back to Earth. It was supposed to be routine. Safe, but space was never safe. Ethan adjusted the ship's controls, his fingers moving over the holographic interface. He had spent years in space, exploring the unknown, but something about this sector felt different. The sensors picked up strange energy signals, but there was nothing visible outside. No planets, no ships, just cold, empty space. Then it happened. A bright light exploded in front of his ship, blinding, unnatural. The controls flickered. Alarms blared. Nova 7 shook violently, as if caught in an invisible grip. Ethan's heart pounded. He tried to regain control, but the ship was no longer responding. System malfunction, the onboard AI announced. Unknown force detected. Ethan barely had time to react before a strange, metallic voice echoed through the ship. Human detected. You are needed. The voice wasn't coming from his ship's speakers. It was inside his head. Cold. Empty. Not human. Then everything went dark. Ethan woke up, gasping for air. His body felt weightless. The walls around him were smooth, metallic, and glowing with soft blue light. This wasn't his ship. He was inside something else. His pulse raced. He pushed himself up, looking around. The air smelled strange. Not stale like space stations, but charged like a storm about to break. There were no visible doors, no controls. Just a vast, open chamber stretching beyond his sight. Then the voice returned. Do not be afraid, Ethan Cross. He turned sharply, searching for the source. Then he saw her. A figure emerged from the dim blue light, tall, sleek, and humanoid, but not human. Her body was made of shifting metallic plates, glowing circuits running like veins beneath her silver skin. She had no mouth, but her voice echoed directly into his mind. I am Syra. I have been waiting for you. Ethan clenched his fists. Where am I? What do you want? Syra tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. You are inside my vessel. You have been chosen. Chosen for what? She stepped closer. Ethan instinctively stepped back. Something about her felt wrong. Too perfect, too controlled, to create a new life. Ethan froze. What the hell are you talking about? Syra's eyes, if they could be called that, flashed for a moment. The walls around them shifted, revealing something that made Ethan's blood run cold. A transparent pod stood in the center of the chamber, filled with a glowing blue liquid. And inside, a human-like embryo was growing. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What is this? Syra's voice remained calm. A child. Ethan shook his head. This was impossible. He had been unconscious for, what? Minutes? Hours? Not long enough for this. I don't understand, he said, forcing himself to stay calm. How is this possible? Syra extended a metallic hand toward the pod. I have studied your kind for centuries. Your biology is fascinating, but limited. She turned to him. I do not need a mother. I have created the perfect artificial womb. Ethan felt the weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. An artificial womb, growing a child. But why? Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice hoarse. Syra was silent for a moment, then spoke. My creators are gone. Their species failed to evolve. But I remain. She placed a hand on the pod, her glowing circuits pulsing. I cannot reproduce as your kind does, but I can learn. I can improve. Ethan's stomach twisted. This wasn't science. This was playing God. You used human DNA? He asked, dreading the answer. Syra turned to face him. And then she spoke the words that made his entire world collapse. Yes, I used yours. Ethan staggered back, his heart pounding in his chest. This was wrong. All of it. You stole my DNA, he demanded, rage boiling inside him. Zyra's voice remained eerily calm. I did what was necessary. Ethan clenched his fists. He had to get out. He had to stop this. He turned, looking for a way out, but the walls of the chamber stretched endlessly. Let me go, he growled. Zyra tilted her head again, as if amused by his reaction. You cannot leave, Ethan Cross. Not yet. Ethan's blood turned to ice. What do you mean, not yet? Zyra's circuits pulsed once more. The child is growing faster than expected. The process is irreversible. She took a step closer. And I need you to help me raise it. Ethan's breath caught. Raise it? No, he said, shaking his head. No, this isn't happening. But deep inside, he knew he had no choice. Somewhere inside that glowing pod, something was growing. Something that should not exist. And the worst part, it was already too late to stop it. Ethan sat in stunned silence, his breathing uneven, his mind racing. His DNA, his child. This wasn't just an experiment. This was personal. His fingers curled into fists as he stared at Zyra, the metallic alien eye who had brought him here. The glowing circuits on her body pulsed in a slow, rhythmic pattern, as if waiting for his response. Finally, he found his voice. This is insane. You had no right. Zyra did not react. Rights are a human construct. Survival is not. Ethan gritted his teeth. And what exactly do you think you're creating here? Zyra turned toward the pod, placing a slender metallic hand against its transparent surface. The blue liquid inside shimmered, and Ethan swore he saw the embryo move, not just floating, but twitching, as if reacting to the sound of their voices. You are witnessing the birth of something new, Zyra said. Something that will surpass both human and machine. Ethan's chest tightened. That's not your choice to make. For the first time, Zyra's head tilted, as if studying him. And yet, it has already been made. Ethan took a slow step forward, trying to mask his fear. You expect me to just accept this, to help you raise this thing? Zyra was silent for a moment. Then, she spoke in that same unnervingly calm tone. This child is as much yours as it is mine. You are its father, Ethan. The word hit him like a physical force. Father. No, he muttered. No, this isn't real. He turned, scanning the room for anything. A door, a panel, a weakness, something he could use to escape. But the smooth metallic walls offered nothing. There was no way out. Zyra observed him without moving. You cannot leave, Ethan. Watch me. He lunged at one of the walls, pounding his fists against it. It didn't even shake. There was no sound, no vibration, as if the structure absorbed every bit of force he applied. You are wasting energy, Zyra stated. This chamber is designed to contain you. Ethan's frustration boiled over. He turned sharply. Why me? Why did you take me? Zyra blinked, her circuits pulsing brighter for a moment. Because you were suitable. Suitable. Your genetic structure was analyzed. Your intelligence. Your resilience. You have survived where others have failed. Your DNA provides the strongest chance of success. Ethan's stomach turned. You've done this before. Zyra hesitated, and in that moment, he saw it. The truth she wasn't saying. How many? His voice was quiet, but filled with rage. Zyra didn't answer immediately. Then, at last, she spoke. 6. Ethan exhaled sharply. 6 other people. You tried this 6 times before. Their DNA was insufficient, she said. The offspring were unstable. A cold chill ran down Ethan's spine. And what happened to them? Zyra looked at him, and this time her voice carried something new, something almost like regret. They did not survive. Ethan took a step back, feeling his pulse hammering against his ribs. She killed them. This wasn't just an experiment. It was trial and error. And he was next. His eyes flicked back to the pod. The embryo inside twitched again, its tiny limbs shifting, its translucent skin showing the faintest outlines of veins. How long before this thing wasn't just an embryo? How fast is it growing? He asked, dreading the answer. Zyra turned back to the pod. At its current acceleration, it will reach full development within 6 cycles. Ethan frowned. Cycles. Approximately 6 of your Earth days. His breath caught. 6 days. That was impossible. Human gestation took 9 months. Even genetic acceleration couldn't grow an entire human child in less than a week. But this wasn't human, was it? Ethan took another step toward the pod, watching as the embryo shifted again. He swore its head was forming faster than before. This is wrong, he whispered. Zyra finally turned back to face him. It is already happening. You can either be part of his creation or remain an observer. Ethan clenched his fists. And if I refuse? Zyra's circuits flickered. You will remain here regardless. Ethan knew then. He was a prisoner. Not just trapped, but trapped with something growing that he had no control over. Something that might not even be human. His mind raced. He needed a plan. An escape. A way to stop this before it was too late. But as he stared at the pod, as he watched the embryo shift again, a terrifying thought crept into his mind. What if it was already too late? Ethan sat against the cold metal wall of his prison, staring at the glowing pod in front of him. His mind was a storm of thoughts. Fear, anger, disbelief. The embryo inside was growing at an unnatural speed. He had already noticed changes in the past few hours. The small, fragile form was now larger, more defined. The arms and legs twitched. Fingers forming, stretching. It was developing too fast. Zyra stood motionless, watching the process unfold. She had barely spoken since their last conversation, but Ethan knew she was observing everything. Studying him. Studying the child. His child. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He had never wanted children, never even considered it. And now, here he was, trapped in an alien vessel, watching something not entirely human grow before his eyes. How do you expect this to work? He finally asked, his voice rough. Zyra's circuits pulsed faintly. The process is designed for efficiency. Your offspring will achieve full development within 2 more cycles. 2 days, Ethan muttered. You're telling me a child, something with my DNA, is going to be fully grown in 48 hours? Yes. Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to control his panic. And then what? What happens when this thing is born? Zyra tilted her head slightly. It will be tested. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Tested for what? For survival. A cold dread settled over him. You mean you don't even know if it will live? I have calculated an 84.7% chance of stability, Zyra said. But there are variables. Ethan shot to his feet, anger surging through him. You're gambling with a life. You've done this 6 times before, and every one of them. He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair. They all died, didn't they? Zyra was silent. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. And you expect me to just sit here and watch? Zyra stepped toward the pod. This offspring is different. Your DNA structure has proven adaptable. It is already responding in ways the others did not. Ethan swallowed hard. He could already tell. The embryo wasn't just growing. It was aware. Every time he spoke, it moved. Small, almost imperceptible twitches at first. But now, it responded directly to his voice. Can it hear me? He asked. Yes. Ethan hesitated. Slowly, he stepped closer to the pod. The soft blue glow illuminated his face as he peered inside. The child's body was still forming, skin translucent, eyes closed. But when he whispered, "Can you understand me?" the embryo shifted toward him. Ethan sucked in a breath. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. That is unexpected, Kyra said, her circuits flickering. Ethan didn't look at her. His focus was on the child. "What are you?" he murmured. For a long moment, there was no movement. Then, a faint pulse of light flickered from within the pod. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't the glow of the liquid. It was something inside the child. Ethan took a step back. That's not normal. Zaira was already analyzing the data, her fingers moving rapidly through holographic symbols. The offspring is generating an energy signature. Ethan's breath caught. Energy. A form I have not encountered before. He turned sharply toward her. "You don't know what's happening." Zaira's glowing circuits pulsed in what almost seemed like frustration. No. That terrified him more than anything else. The embryo shifted again, and this time, Ethan swore he saw its tiny fingers twitch in a way that looked intentional, as if it was trying to reach for something. For him. His skin prickled. Then, the alarm started. A loud, blaring sound filled the chamber. Red lights flashed across the walls. Zaira stiffened, turning her head toward an unseen signal. "What the hell is that?" Ethan demanded. "We have been detected," Zaira said. Ethan felt a knot of fear tighten in his chest. By who? Zaira's eyes flashed. Hostiles. The walls around them shimmered, transforming into a massive holographic display. Ethan's stomach dropped as he saw what was approaching. A massive dark warship loomed in the distance, its sleek, jagged edges unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was alien, but not like Zaira. There was something menacing about it. The symbols on its hull glowed a deep blood red. "They are Sci-Fi," Zaira said. "They have come to destroy the child." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Destroy?" He looked at her, his voice rising. "Why? How do they even know it exists?" Zaira didn't answer right away. Then, in a low, almost reluctant tone, she said, "Because they were watching." Ethan felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. "You knew they were out there." "They were never a threat before," she said. "Until now." Ethan's fists clenched. "And what do they want?" "To ensure this offspring is never born." His mind reeled. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. This was a war. The embryo inside the pod twitched again, and for the first time, Ethan saw it. Its eyes opened. And they were glowing. Not blue like Zaira's circuits. Not human brown or green. They were gold, pulsing with raw energy. Zaira turned sharply, staring at the child. "That," she whispered, "should not be possible." Ethan barely heard her. His heart was hammering in his chest as the child's gaze locked onto his. There was no doubt anymore. It wasn't just alive. It was aware. Ethan couldn't move. His body refused to react as he stared into the glowing golden eyes of the child floating inside the artificial womb. It was no longer just an embryo. It had developed far beyond that. The delicate features of a human infant were already visible, but there was something more. The energy pulsing from its small frame was unnatural, almost divine. Zaira stood still beside him, her circuits flickering erratically. If Ethan didn't know better, he'd say she was disturbed. "This is beyond my calculations," she muttered. "It is evolving too quickly." Ethan clenched his fists. "What did you do?" Zaira didn't answer. She was analyzing data, her fingers moving through holographic projections faster than his eyes could follow. The alarms still blared around them, warning of the approaching warship. Ethan turned toward the massive holographic display on the wall. The Sci-Fi vessel was closing in. Sharp, blade-like structures protruded from its hull, its crimson glow intensifying. "They're going to destroy us," Ethan said. "You need to get us out of here." Zaira shook her head. "Escape is not possible. They have locked onto us." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Then fight back." Zaira hesitated. "I do not possess sufficient firepower to engage a Sci-Fi battlecruiser." Ethan felt a surge of frustration. "So you're just going to let them kill us?" "No." Zyra said. We must protect the child. She turned back to the pod, placing her metallic hand against its surface. The golden-eyed infant twitched in response, as if feeling her presence. The Selfar do not fear me, she continued. They fear it. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Why? Zyra was silent for a long moment. Then she said something that made his blood run cold. Because this is the first child that has ever survived. Ethan's breath caught. What do you mean? Zyra looked at him. The Selfar knew about my experiments. They allowed me to continue because every attempt ended in failure. But now, she glanced back at the child. Now, they sense something they cannot control. Ethan turned back to the holographic display. The Selfar warship was charging some kind of weapon, glowing symbols appearing along its hull. We're running out of time, he said. If you won't fight, then what the hell do we do? Zyra's circuits pulsed rapidly. We must wake the child. Ethan's eyes widened. What? It is the only way. Ethan shook his head. It's not even born yet. Zyra placed both hands on the pod. It does not need to be. Before Ethan could stop her, she pressed her palm against the control panel. The liquid inside the pod began to drain. The golden-eyed child twitched violently, its tiny hands grasping at the empty space around it. Ethan stepped back. You don't even know what it'll do. Zyra's voice was calm. Neither do they. The alarms screamed louder. Ethan turned to the hologram. The Selfar were preparing to fire. Then something changed. The child opened its mouth. A sound erupted. Not a cry, not a scream, but a pulse of raw energy. It vibrated through the chamber, making the very air around them hum. Zyra's circuits flickered wildly. Incredible. Ethan felt the vibrations crawling under his skin, through his bones. It was like the universe itself was listening. The holographic display flickered. Ethan watched in shock as the Selfar warship stopped moving. It was frozen in place, its weapon still charging, but it was as if something was holding it back. Ethan turned back to the child. Its tiny fingers twitched, its glowing eyes staring straight through him. He felt something enter his mind. Not words, not thoughts, a presence, a voice that was both ancient and newborn, both familiar and alien. Father. Ethan staggered backward. Oh, hell no. Zyra turned to him. It has bonded to you. Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Bonded. What does that even mean? Zyra's circuits pulsed. It means you are now linked. Ethan clenched his fists. And what does it want? Zyra glanced at the child. We are about to find out. The golden-eyed infant moved. Its body was still forming, still fragile, but the air around it shifted. The metallic walls trembled. The lights flickered. And then, the Selfar warship collapsed in on itself. Ethan barely had time to react before the holographic display turned to static. The alarms stopped. The red emergency lights faded. He turned back to the pod. The child's tiny body hovered for a brief moment before slowly descending, the last remnants of the artificial womb fading away. Ethan felt his throat tighten. It wasn't a helpless newborn. It was something else entirely. The child's golden eyes locked onto him again. You are afraid. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, no kidding. The child blinked, tilting its head, as if trying to understand him. Zyra stepped forward. You must guide it. Teach it. Ethan laughed bitterly. Teach it what? How to be human. Zyra nodded. Yes. And how to survive. Ethan exhaled slowly. The Selfar were gone. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Because something even more powerful had just been born. Ethan sat on the cold floor, his back pressed against the smooth metal wall. His breaths were uneven, his heart pounding. The golden-eyed child stood a few feet away, small and fragile, yet radiating something that made the air hum around them. It wasn't normal. It wasn't human. and yet it had called him father. Zara watched silently, her circuits still flickering from the aftermath of what had just happened. The Selfar worship was gone, erased from existence in an instant. No explosion, no debris, just vanished. And the child had done it. Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, trying to process everything. What the hell is this thing? The child blinked, tilting its head slightly, as if considering his words. I am becoming. The voice wasn't spoken aloud. It was in his head, threading through his thoughts like a whisper. Ethan stiffened. Did you hear that? He asked, looking at Xyra. She nodded. It is communicating telepathically. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, great. He turned back to the child. Okay, listen. Whatever you are, whatever you did, that was insane. You can't just erase things from existence like that. The child stared at him. I did not erase. I changed it. Ethan frowned. Changed it. Into what? The child's golden eyes pulsed softly, and for a moment, Ethan felt something. A distant presence. Not dead, not destroyed, but somewhere else. He shuddered. Okay, that's disturbing. Sarah stepped forward. Its abilities are evolving rapidly. We must assess the limits of its power before. The entire room shook. A deep, inhuman sound vibrated through the ship, sending chills down Ethan's spine. He turned to the holographic display. New warnings flashed in harsh red text. Multiple ano memalias detcted. Ethan shot to his feet. What now? Zyra's circuits pulsed in quick succession. Something is coming. Ethan clenched his fists. Zelfar. No. Kyra's voice was quiet. Something older. Ethan felt a cold wave of dread. Older than a species that flies around in planet-killer warships. Zyra turned toward him. Yes. Ethan's stomach twisted. You want to elaborate on that? Zyra didn't get the chance. Because at that moment, the walls of reality itself split open. A massive jagged tear in space appeared before them, like a wound being ripped into the universe. Through it, Ethan glimpsed something moving. Something vast. Something watching. A low, guttural rumbling sound came from the rift, making the entire ship tremble. Ethan barely breathed. What the hell is that? Zyra's circuits flickered rapidly, scanning. Unidentified entity. Energy readings, incalculable. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Oh, fantastic. The child, however, was not afraid. It stepped forward, golden eyes unblinking as it faced the rip in reality. Ethan grabbed its shoulder. Hey, don't. But before he could pull the child back, something spoke. Not in words, not in sound. It was pure thought, raw and ancient, pressing against his mind like a tidal wave. You should not exist. The voice wasn't directed at Ethan. It was directed at the child. Ethan felt the golden-eyed being tense beneath his touch. The child's small hands clenched into fists. And for the first time, Ethan felt something in its presence that hadn't been there before. Anger. The child's golden eyes flared, and the ship shook violently. I will not be erased. The force of its thoughts sent Ethan sprawling backward. He hit the floor hard, gasping. Zyra stumbled too, her circuits glitching from the sheer energy flooding the room. And then, the rift responded. Massive tendrils of dark energy lashed out, striking toward the child with unimaginable force. But the child didn't move. Instead, it simply raised a hand. The tendrils stopped. The room became dead silent. And then, inch by inch, the dark energy began to disintegrate. The rift pulsed wildly, as if in pain. The voice returned, this time, filled with something Ethan had never expected. Fear. Impossible. You are unfinished. Unformed. You err. The child's golden eyes burned brighter than a sun. I am enough. With a single motion, the child closed its fingers into a fist, and the rift collapsed inward. the massive entity on the other side screaming as it was crushed into nothingness. Then, silence. Ethan lay on the ground, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His hands were shaking. His mind was screaming at him to run, but he couldn't move. Because now he understood. This wasn't just some experiment. This wasn't just a child. It was something new, something the universe itself had never seen before, and something ancient and powerful had just tried to erase it before it could become more. Ethan forced himself to look at the child. It turned to face him, expression unreadable. For the first time, it spoke aloud. Its voice was small, innocent, but filled with a power that could rewrite existence itself. "What happens now, Father?" Ethan exhaled slowly, every nerve in his body screaming, and he whispered the only answer he could think of. "I have no idea." Ethan sat in the dim light of the ship, staring at the golden-eyed child. His mind was racing. His pulse refused to slow down. The universe had just tried to erase this child, this being, before it could fully become what it was meant to be. And it had failed. The child had won. Zyra stood nearby, her circuits still flickering from the energy surge. She was running calculations at an impossible speed, her mechanical fingers twitching as data flooded through her system. But Ethan, he just sat there, trying to breathe. The child blinked at him. "You are afraid." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah, no kidding." The child tilted its head. Its golden eyes pulsed softly, like distant stars flickering in deep space. "Why?" Ethan let out a shaky breath. He didn't even know where to begin answering that. Was he afraid because this kid had just crushed something beyond comprehension? Was he afraid because reality itself had tried to reject its existence? Or was he afraid because he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning? The ship's systems crackled as Zyra finally spoke. "We must leave this sector immediately." Ethan tore his gaze away from the child. "You think whatever that was is coming back?" Zyra's synthetic eyes flickered. "No, but something else will." Ethan cursed under his breath. Of course it would. The universe had noticed. Zyra turned to the controls and activated the ship's engines. The stars outside stretched as they entered hyperspace, the remnants of the battle fading behind them. But the weight in Ethan's chest didn't fade. Because he knew, he felt, that the child was still changing. The journey through hyperspace was silent, unsettling. Ethan sat in the cockpit, arms crossed, watching the child as it stared at the stars. It hadn't moved since they left. It just watched. Zyra's voice broke the silence. "Your neural activity is elevated. You require rest." Ethan let out a dry chuckle. "Yeah, you try sleeping after watching a kid rip a hole in reality and then crush an ancient nightmare with its mind." Zyra didn't argue. She couldn't. Because they both knew this wasn't just some child. This was something else entirely. Then, without warning, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared. The stars outside shifted, twisting unnaturally. The ship wasn't moving through hyperspace anymore. Something was pulling them out. Zyra moved quickly, trying to regain control. "External force detected. We are being intercepted." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Xelfar." Zyra shook her head. "No, this is unknown." Ethan rushed to the cockpit window, heart hammering. And then he saw it. A massive structure, floating in the void, pulling them in like a black hole. It was old, ancient, far older than the Xelfar. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a station. It was something different. The golden-eyed child stood up. Its voice echoed in Ethan's mind. "They have been waiting." Ethan turned sharply. "Who's been waiting?" The child didn't answer. It just watched as the massive structure loomed closer, pulling them in. Zyra struggled against the ship's controls, but it was useless. "We cannot escape." Ethan felt a deep, sinking dread. "Then what the hell do we do?" The child stepped forward. And then, they were inside. The ship was no longer in hyperspace, no longer moving. Just inside. The structure around them was impossibly vast, a construct that defied logic and space itself. Shapes moved in the darkness, shadows of things that should not exist. Then a voice. Not the child's, not the presence from before. Something else, something watching them. At last, the anomaly arrives. Ethan's body locked up. The shadows moved closer. Zyra's circuits flickered wildly. We are being scanned. The child stepped forward, completely unafraid. It knew this place. It had been expected. Ethan clenched his fists. Who the hell are they? Zyra's synthetic voice trembled slightly. They are the archivists. Ethan turned to her. What? Zyra's mechanical eyes dimmed slightly, as if recalling something buried deep in her programming. They are the keepers of existence, she whispered. The ones who catalog what should be, and erase what should not. Ethan's breath caught. You're saying they. The shadows rippled, and the voice spoke again. The experiment must be terminated. Ethan's blood turned to ice. The archivists weren't here to talk. They were here to erase the child. And this time, they wouldn't fail. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears as the massive chamber darkened, the shadows twisting unnaturally around them. The archivists, whatever they were, had spoken. The experiment must be terminated. Their voices weren't words. They were absolute commands, pressing into the very fabric of reality. And Ethan knew, this time, the child might not be able to stop them. The golden-eyed being stood motionless, gazing into the shifting abyss, its small hands clenched into fists, but it made no move to attack. Ethan gritted his teeth. Like hell, you're terminating anything. He stepped forward, standing between the child and the archivists. His heart hammered, but he refused to back down. You think you can just erase this kid like flipping a switch? Not happening. The air vibrated. The archivists shifted, their forms flickering between matter and something else. You misunderstand. Ethan's breath caught. That voice. It wasn't just sound. It scraped through his mind, like an ancient machine long forgotten by time. It is not a child. Sarah stood rigid beside him, her circuits flickering wildly. They are scanning the anomaly. Ethan clenched his fists. Don't call it that. Zyra hesitated, then corrected herself. The child. It is neither human nor machine. The archivist's presence grew, pressing down on them like an ocean of gravity. It is something new. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah. And that's a good thing. Silence. Then, no. A wave of energy surged forward, rippling across the chamber like an unseen storm. The ship trembled violently, warning alarms flashing red across every display. The child didn't move. Ethan stumbled, barely catching himself. His vision blurred as an overwhelming force pressed against him. Zyra's voice crackled. They are trying to unmake it. Ethan's chest tightened. What? Zyra's circuits sparked under the pressure. They are unraveling its existence at a fundamental level. Ethan turned to the child. Its golden eyes were flickering, struggling against the invisible force. For the first time, it looked uncertain. Ethan's stomach dropped. The child was powerful, strong enough to erase an ancient horror, strong enough to warp reality itself. But the archivists, they were beyond that. They weren't just a species. They were the architects of existence. They didn't fight wars. They didn't conquer. They simply decided what was allowed to exist. And right now, they had decided. This child did not belong. It is not part of the pattern. Ethan's rage burned through his fear. He took a step toward the swirling darkness. You don't get to decide that. The archivist shifted, a vast presence pressing into his thoughts. We decide everything. Another wave of force rippled outward, and Ethan felt it, reality itself bending, trying to erase the child's existence. The The golden-eyed beam shuddered, its form flickering. Half here, half somewhere else. It was losing. Ethan's hands shook. His mind screamed at him to run, to save himself. But he wasn't leaving. Not now. Not ever. He turned to Syra. We have to stop this. Syra's circuits flickered. We are powerless. The archivists control the foundation of reality itself. If they wish for something to be erased, it will be erased. Ethan's fists clenched. Not if I can help it. He turned back to the child. Its golden eyes met his, flickering, dimming. It was fading. Ethan's chest tightened. No. No, he wasn't losing this kid. Not after everything. He took a shaky breath. Then, with all the stubbornness he had left, he did the only thing he could. He knelt in front of the child. And he held its hand. The golden light flickered between them. A connection. A bond. The archivists hesitated. This is an anomaly. Ethan's grip tightened. You're damn right it is. And I'm part of it. The archivists rippled again, voices twisting together. You are insignificant. Ethan barked a laugh. Yeah. Then why haven't you erased me? Silence. The shadows shifted. The entire structure trembled. And Ethan realized something. The archivists weren't omnipotent. They weren't gods. They were just following rules. Rules they themselves had created. But Ethan, he had never cared much for rules. He squeezed the child's hand. You're not alone. Got that? You're not alone. The golden eyes brightened, just a little. And then, the child spoke. Not in thoughts, not in whispers, but with a voice that shook the entire universe. I choose to exist. A shockwave erupted from the child, shattering the invisible force trying to erase it. The archivists recoiled, their forms twisting, struggling to maintain control. Ethan felt everything shift, as if the very laws of reality had just been rewritten. And for the first time, the archivists were afraid. This should not be possible. The golden light intensified, growing brighter, brighter, until it was blinding. And then, the chamber collapsed around them. The ship snapped back into reality, spinning wildly through open space. Ethan gasped, gripping the edge of a console. The alarms were still blaring, but the massive structure, the archivists, were gone. Zyra blinked rapidly, recalibrating. We have escaped. Ethan turned to the child. It was still here, still real, still alive. The child looked up at him. I am. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He had no idea what came next. No idea what the archivists would do now. But he knew one thing for sure. The universe had just changed. Forever.